Next up, Russ and I review the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, films 1 through 7. Is this the best horror film franchise of all time?
We'll see, bitch. We'll just see.
Welcome back to 4K Kings. My name is Matt.
And I am Russ.
And we are back today to review the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise films 1 through 7. This review is in honor of the most recent 4K box set from Warner Brothers. Of course, we're going to dive into this set. We're going to talk about the transfers, the features. We're going to take a look at all the steelbooks and the packaging. But first, we want to dive into this franchise as a whole.
Hold it right there, Squidlips. If you think I'm going to settle for just another sleazeball video promotion, you must be dreaming.
Nightmare on Elm Street came out in 1984, written and directed by Wes Craven. We have a full review of this already, as it is the only film in this series to be released in
ultra high definition.
So go and check that video out. This film involved a group of teenagers that was targeted in their dreams by the undead killer Freddy Krueger, later finding out that their parents are the ones that killed him, so now he is back for revenge. Starring Robert Englund, Heather Langenkamp, John Saxon, and Johnny Depp in his debut. It is one of the first films produced by New Line, which was later called The House That Freddy Built. One of the things that I feel like was really awesome about this, playing with people's perception of reality, where you don't know if this is a moment where someone's sleeping or is this real. Every once in a while, you're like assuming this is reality, and then all of a sudden, oh no, we're actually in a dream. And his ability to mess with the characters in the films, as well as to mess with the audience's perception of reality, is a really cool thing that Freddy and the Nightmare on Elm Street series does throughout. Freddy became this cultural phenomenon. There's a reason for that. I mean, he is such a great villain. He's not hiding behind a mask. He's very terrifying. He's got a great weapon. His look, the way that he sort of stalks and terrorizes the victims, very unique. And then, of course, there's Robert Englund that's playing this guy who brings the personality out of this character.
I'd always put a guttural spin on the Freddy voice. On the early films, the early Nightmare films, they would fool around in the sound mix, slowing it down a little. So if I said, "Welcome to prime time, bitch!" it would come out, "Welcome to prime time, bitch!"
In the first movie, he's a little bit more subdued. He's a little bit less on screen than the next sequels, but it's still very terrifying and very effective. We haven't gotten into the one-liner Freddy yet, where he's, kind of got that dark humor and those quips, but just his mannerisms, very impressive and a very great villain, not just from the look, but who is portraying him.
He was gleeful even in the original, and that's what made Freddy Krueger stand out from all the other slashers, is that this was a man who enjoyed doing his job.
Yeah, he does. Freddy rules.
Yeah. Michael Myers and all, they just felt like robots. Freddy Krueger enjoyed it. It was like he signed up. He filled out an application to kill kids, and it makes it in turn fun for the audience. It's perverse. Robert Englund has always played it perverse. It's just the dialogue. Yep. More lines were given to him.
He is fiendish. Wes Craven, the way that he described the character, he wanted this person to be an evil, twisted, perverted father figure that wants to destroy and is able to get children at their most vulnerable moment, which is when they're asleep, and he enjoys it.
It's not as simple as just killing the bad guy at the end. You have to literally take back the power you gave the bad guy in the first place. You have to own your fear and overcome your fear. And I think Wes Craven did that tremendously throughout his career, and I think Nightmare on Elm Street is probably the best example of it.
This is obviously the most well-revered film in the series, and people are still talking about it to this day and the impact that it has had. It is a very cool story, and there's a great cast that goes along with it. These were very normal kids that you actually didn't want to die, whereas in modern-day slashers, they're only casting the hottest people, and you're waiting for them all to get picked off, whereas in this movie, I don't want anyone to die.
In this movie, they made the hottest person the mom. I thought that when I was 10, and I still think that.
Sultry, horny mother, ultra effective.
Not only her stunning looks, maternal love that every man craves, but just her acting ability, getting sucked through a keyhole.
I just felt that the ending to the movie didn't send the audience out with any great excitement.
And he and I had lots of arguments.
This was not supposed to be a franchise, or at least that was not the wish of Wes Craven. He wanted this to be wrapped up, and the producers obviously saw money. They decided to sort of change the ending around in such a way that we could open this up for a sequel, which Wes Craven was absolutely against.
With the ending that we now have, it doesn't quite make sense.
they weren't wrong when they saw franchise potential. I feel bad for Wes Craven, who basically had this great, brilliant idea and entry into the horror catalog that we all know, and it kind of got stolen away from him and ended in a way that he didn't want. This movie ended up crushing it at the box office, $57 million on a $1.8 million budget. Critics and audiences loved it, and due to its cultural impact, it's been looked upon as one of the best horror films ever made. As the films continue, things get a little rockier, but this is definitely a touchstone of horror films and probably will be considered that till the end of time.
After the film opened so big on the weekend, head of distribution went, right into Bob Shea and said, "We need a sequel."
When the film opened, to see this huge line around the block on Broadway of people waiting to get into the theater, then I knew that the fuse had been lit.
Wes Craven, after this, jumped off this franchise temporarily, but then here comes Jack Shoulder to put the second part out only 1 year later.
I don't think that there was a real conversation about Wes doing Nightmare 2 because he and Bob had such a stressed relationship. It was a long time before I think they spoke to each other.
So 1 year later enters Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, Freddy's Revenge in 1985, when a teen begins having a reoccurring nightmares of Freddy after moving into Nancy's former home. Starring Mark Patton, Kim Myers, Robert Russler, and of course, Robert Englund. Most people may be aware that this was a very troubled sequel that had mixed reviews, but has later found success as a cult film within this franchise, which was actually covered pretty extensively in the documentary Scream Queen, which we have covered also.
It is my personal favorite sequel of the entire series. And part of the reason why it's one of my personal favorites is it is nothing like the original.
I was never a huge fan of the original. I mean, I understood why it was good and I understood why it was successful, but I felt no compunction to follow the template of the first film.
And I've always thought that was the major point of contention within the horror community and the fans, is that this strayed so far away from the formula. But my argument always was there wasn't a formula yet. This was part 2. And I admired that it tried to go in a different direction rather than just directly aping the original.
It is more of like a possession story than it is.
That's exactly what it is.
It is very interesting, and that is an interesting direction. His struggle with Freddy taking over his body every once in a while, whether he was dreaming or if it was real, sometimes that's not even clear. It didn't really grab me. And I almost say that this movie to me felt a little boring.
It didn't have a unity to it. It just had a bunch of scenes, which I think, the worst of the sequels or the worst moments of the sequels were just kind of striking scenes, but overall, the story didn't often cohere very well.
I don't think any Nightmare on Elm Street is boring.
The end of the movie is its strongest point when things really start hitting, but like all the stuff leading up to it, I feel like a lot of it's relying on Mark Patton as an actor. It's really relying on the storytelling itself and not so much Freddy or the scares. It's more about like what's happening to this guy. One thing that's crazy to even think about is that New Line thought, you know what?
Why do we need to have Robert Englund? Because he's just a guy in a rubber mask. We started Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2 with an extra.
And he was just atrocious. He would walk like a dime store monster. He would sort of hunker around.
Moving around like Frankenstein.
He was just terrible, terrible.
They thought Halloween, Friday the 13th, dude, anybody will do. And they learned very quickly, nah, that's not going to work.
This one is probably the scariest and the most gruesome I've seen Freddy in terms of his performance and his makeup.
There's a mean, sinister approach to not only like what he's doing, how he's doing it. There's still a sort of psychosexual element there that he did have with Nancy in the original. But here, there's even more of a glee in the darkness of how he's toying with Jesse that I just think is great, effective horror.
I always think about with these movies too and how they end up taking care of Freddy. The first one, Nancy brings him into the real world and takes care of him in that way. In this one, when she dispatches him with the power of love, basically like kisses Freddy and brings Mark back out of it, that felt a little weak to me also.
Disagree.
Do you?
I disagree.
You like
because
that?
That is on par in my mind with in the original, the ultimate message being you can't just kill him, you have to face your fear. What are universal human emotions? Fear, love. That's how you get rid of Freddy beyond just killing him.
Yeah.
Honestly, they abandoned that after 2.
I didn't mind Lisa. The friends were passable.
Grady's hilarious in this movie. I love Grady. I love that Grady is a jock, but he is so open-minded, dude. He went from bullying him in the beginning to like, no, you're a human being, and he was empathetic to a closeted gay friend. I love Grady.
And he died because of it. And I gotta give a shout out to Gay Quado also for being in this movie.
Oh, we gotta give a shout out to Bob Shea's cameo.
The gayest thing in the movie, by the way, is Bob Shea himself.
Bob Shea looked darling in his leather costume as the bartender. He was so sweet. And I want you to know that we all believed him.
The gay subtext or full-on text is obviously something that people might have picked up on, maybe commented on at the time, but it definitely became a huge point that was brought up about this movie. And there were a lot of blatant homoerotic themes, this possession, it was this being repressed inside and becoming what, you know, I really ought to be.
And the gay community picked up on it.
Nightmare on Elm Street 2 rocked Europe because they picked up on the whole psychosexual, homoerotic subtext. They love that film in Europe.
In America, we were more puritanical about that stuff in our entertainment. But he said over in Europe, they got it and they loved it because of it. The writer, he denied it for years.
Yes.
And that's what was fucked up.
David Chaskin, without a doubt, knew what he was writing.
Because then all the blame went on Mark Patton as a gay man playing a straight man in a movie. All these 80s, horror fans with sort of Neanderthal views on the subject were looking at him like, they put you in this, you're the gay man who ruined our movie.
Yeah.
And it's like, nah, it was all there. He did nothing wrong. And he was just the first male you saw in a final girl role.
It sounded like it ruined his life.
The fact that Mark Patton was an openly gay actor, I don't think had been revealed at that time yet.
Ultimately, this film did not live up to expectations. Reviews were mixed. Everyone panned the performances and the scares. Despite a few main set pieces, for the most part, people were fairly let down.
Even though it was a successful film in terms of box office, it was a great disappointment. So I think there was a huge amount riding on what to do with Nightmare 3.
So that brings us to Nightmare on Elm Street 3, The Dream Warriors, 1987 film directed by your boy, Chuck Russell. The story centers around Nancy, who's back now, a psychiatrist who helps teens in a mental hospital battle Freddy in their dreams. Starring Heather Langenkamp, Patricia Arquette, Larry Fishburne, not Lawrence yet, Craig Wasson, John Saxon's toupee came back, and of course, Robert Englund.
I think you're forgetting maybe the most important cast member, Matt.
Jennifer Rubin.
Ah, yes, Jennifer Rubin.
Can't you understand that?
Wes came back to co-write.
What is in the movie from his draft is next to nothing. It is Frank Darabont and Chuck Russell's movie. What Craven turned in was way too dark. And Craven himself admitted it years later.
Due to part 2 bombing, they weren't sure if they were going to even continue with this franchise. But
2 didn't bomb.
They were expecting that Nightmare on Elm Street 2, they were hoping it would do 70% of what the first one did. It ended up doing 150% of what the first one did.
As far as financial-wise, you're right. It didn't bomb,
it underperformed.
It underperformed, and critically, it was not well received.
They were listening more to the audience,
Yes.
New Line was, than just the money.
Next to the original, part 3 is revered as one of the best films in the series. I think it hits a great sweet spot between scary and dark humor and everything that people love about Freddy as a whole. I think it just really gets everything about it right. It's still scary, but there's just a fun factor to it that wasn't there completely yet. And this one taking place completely like a mental hospital. It is very dark by nature, dark bars that they're in a dark junkyard, and even in all the dream worlds, the houses that they get pulled into in their dreams, it's all dark and dank. Craven himself, I guess, thought that it was time for a group to fight Freddy, a group of people that are taking him on together, and that formula has basically stayed till this day. One other thing that this film kicks off, that each one of them has a unique trait or characteristic, and at some point in time, Freddy exploits that trait or characteristic.
Let's get hot.
Another great touchstone of this film is the set pieces, the marionette scene.
Even as a kid, I felt squeamish, like seeing the veins rip out of the front of your foot.
The giant Freddy head.
Phallic Freddy.
Love Phallic Freddy.
this looks like a penis. And I said, yeah.
Looking at this from 1987, a lot of great set pieces and effects that were pulled off. And not to say that the other two before it were slouches, but this one, there's just a lot going for it.
You know, in a way, we're responsible for making the Freddy character a little bit more of a pop character.
Everyone is always like, after part 3, Freddy Krueger became the insult comic and the hog of the show. And no, guys, this started in part 3. I'm not saying it's bad. I love that Freddy Krueger became a rock star. I think his one-liners are hilarious. But I always took umbrage when people act like 3 was on the same level as 2 and 1 when it comes to Freddy Krueger.
No, you're right. This is the moment where he goes from being just full-on scary to scary and funny simultaneously. And I think that's why I said this is a great sweet spot. And all the times where he does face off against someone and the things he says, I'm not laughing at what he's saying. It's just he's got something to say. In the later ones, he's making a point to say something where you're like, all right, that's fucking funny.
It was a wise decision. The series needed to go in that direction.
You can't keep relying on the cast of characters that they're sticking against Freddy. Freddy's got to be the character.
As 4, 5, and 6 needed to rely on 3 more, you're just going to get diminishing returns no matter what, because 3 was the peak of this idea.
For the very first time in history, a small independent film has swept the weekend box office grosses.
The #1 movie in the country last week in Syracuse. They called in the mounted police to control the crowds at theaters.
This is the point where things start to kind of get a little crazy in the pop culture sense. This movie specifically spawned comics, it spawned clothing. It's even the main reference for the NES video game that came out, where you're collecting bones of Freddy. Now that essentially it was revived in a way and money was back on the table, 1 year later, a new entry would be released as a direct sequel to Part 3.
Before we close out 3, Jennifer Rubin, I'm still here. Reach out to us on the channel. We're going to make it work, baby.
This girl fights and never says die.
That brings us to Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master, 1988, directed by Rennie Harlan. Freddy returns to terrorize the remaining Dream Warriors and newcomer Alice Johnson. Starring Lisa Wilcox, Tuesday Knight, Danny Hassel, Brooke Thies, and Robert Englund. Patricia Arquette's character returns, but she declined so that she could take on meteor roles. According to Rachel Talalay, a meeting between Harlan and James Cameron occurred where Cameron inquired,
Well, so how are you resurrecting Freddy this time? Randy just looks at him and goes, a dog pisses fire.
I almost bailed.
Part 4 is probably my favorite next to Part 3. Outside of 1, can we be clear on that? Like 1 stands over there. Let's just take what was great in 3 and let's just keep going with that, except now you have a different director who's going to see it in a different way. And with Rennie Harlan, you're going to see things in a much more energetic, amped up way.
Just to stay with the sort of superhero concept with Freddy, I said, let's give him sunglasses, almost like he's like Tom Cruise.
Now you're back in a high school with kids, it's sunny, it's bright. I feel like the movie doesn't really kick off until they take care of all the residual Part 3 stuff. Where Kristen, Kincaid, and Joey, they're still hanging on from Part 3, and they're starting to kind of like be haunted by Freddy once again. Until finally Freddy takes care of all of them, and now he needs someone else to feed him these souls. Kristen finally passes this gift on to her friend Alice, who is now the Dream Master. They were looking for someone that could play believable as afraid, but also be believable as tough.
Kristen had to go because obviously we already had to recast her, and that's weird. Kincaid, come on, man. It was so cool to see Kincaid as a black man survive Part 3, and then you do that to him in the beginning of Part 4.
If you're going to the movie to see me in Part 4, go straight to the theaters. Don't get no popcorn, don't get no drinks or nothing, because my ass will be dead by the time you sit down.
But one other character that's in this, Dan. To me, Dan doesn't seem like he belongs in any of these movies. He seems too nice. He seems too normal. Like, he just doesn't seem like he fits any of these people or would be friends with any of them.
He belongs on TGIF. He doesn't bother you. He doesn't anger you. He doesn't inspire you either. But that's a good dude. That's Dan.
That's Dan. I don't want anything to happen to Dan.
I'm Dan.
This one stands out the most to me from a visual perspective. Yeah, Freddy's picking off kids one at a time, but starting with 3 and now in this one for sure, there's like individual set pieces for everyone's death.
In terms of the sets standing out and the deaths, I'd say it's better than 3.
That waterbed scene is really thrilling to watch. The bug scene, her arms split open. It's always been freaky. But watching it in 4K, seeing how wet and disgusting it looks, dude, this is some of the best body horror moments I've ever seen.
When her head hits it and then she's pulling it off.
It looks great.
As a kid who had asthma, I loved my girl's death. Just the way she gets sucked in.
Yeah.
And he just fucking drops her right at the end. It's a drop that
Yep.
made me laugh so hard. You know?
Yeah, at this point, we're laughing.
Welcome to Wonderland, Alice.
The ending in terms of how Freddy gets ripped apart by arms and things coming out of his body, like that moment is insane.
His chest, the souls screaming on them.
There's a special feature where they show how they had to do that scene at the end, and there's like a huge body of Freddy where their actual life-size actors are inside, like swimming around. And again, an effects showcase. It just really looked so awesome. The time loop.
My favorite sequence of all the Nightmare on Elm Street films is in part 4 when Lisa Wilcox leaves the Craven.
Come on, we have to hurry. What's going on?
And that's just such a brilliant realization of a dream.
Her and Dan are running in and out of that diner, and that keeps happening over and over and over again. And you just have that queasy feeling.
Yeah.
You have this like like you are in a dream.
It's effective. I believe Nightmare 4 has the greatest pop soundtrack out of any entry in the series. Drama-rama, dude. Anything.
I love it too. I forgot where it shows up in the movie, and when he's doing all his karate moves and it's on, I'm like, yeah, fuck yeah. Fight! So let's talk just briefly too about Freddy. As the series progresses, he's getting more and more larger than life. He's on screen a lot more. You're wanting to see him now. It's almost like, okay, how is he going to kill this person?
The humans are just fodder at this point.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I thought of too. I was like, at this point, Freddy's motives, like his core motives, are gone.
Now it's just a job for Fred. But lucky for us, dude, he loves his job.
This one's got some one-liners. How's this for a wet dream? Want to suck face? No pain, no gain.
Rick, you little meatball.
I'm on part 4 bandwagon the entire way, all the way until the very end when it comes time to obviously have the big showdown with Freddy and how's it all going to play out. And I love the getting prepared for battle stuff. And she uses that device that sort of blasts him, but of course nothing works. And then it's like, okay, well, what's she going to do? And she like remembers some poem and you got to show evil its face or something. And she holds up a mirror. Freddy looks at himself in the mirror and he explodes or whatever. It's like, that was a little weak to me.
If it would have been alluded to in the beginning, it probably would have worked better.
Yes.
But as you said, it comes out of fucking nowhere.
That's all said and done. They see his reflection and a fountain, so you know he's coming back. Overall, it's a great ride. I would say even more of a fun element than 3/silly, where you're starting to take it a little less seriously, but that doesn't bother me at all.
I think 3's tighter, and the climax of 3, as you said, it builds and builds like a traditional movie.
Yeah.
And I think 4 feels more like a series of events.
Reviews were mixed from critics still, but the audiences loved it. The special effects were praised, some saying even better than part 3.
I don't think there's any right or wrong answer to that.
That's true.
And that's actually one thing I love about this franchise. Each film has its own visual style. I think Chuck Russell's visuals look a little different than Harlan's.
It was the biggest of all of them. It far outgrossed anything.
And then eventually the movie made about $50 million in domestic box office, which was at the time the most successful independent movie ever made.
Film was a success, further solidified the franchise and Freddy's dominance in pop culture. At this point now, a music video starring Freddy was released for the film, and there was a TV spinoff which was born. And then once again, 1 year later, another sequel on the way.
And I tried to live up to the promise that I made to the fans that we were not going to make a movie that we didn't think was going to be good. 5 was arguably lame.
The Dream Child, 1988, directed by Stephen Hopkins. And in this one, Freddy Krueger returns now using pregnant Alice Johnson's baby's dreams to claim new victims.
Do unborn babies dream?
This concept was originally pitched for part 3, but a pregnant producer at the time declined it because it was too disturbing for them.
For Nightmare 3, I had pitched them Freddy as a baby. And I went in, one of the executives was pregnant at the time, and I was literally picturing, picture the claws clawing their way out.
This stars Lisa Wilcox, Kelly Jo Minter, Erica Anderson, Danny Hassel, and of course, Robert Englund. This one shifts a little bit towards more of a darker tone. The director was quoted as saying he wanted a more gothic feel to this film. And apparently editing was also a little challenging due to the need to tone down a lot of blood and gore, and that's why an unrated version of this film does exist.
We just had to keep on cutting and cutting and cutting. We would send it back and forward to the MPAA. I don't know, 20 times or so.
They cut out half of everything we did.
1 year after 4, Alice now has a whole new friend group, and no one seems to know what's going on, despite like not even like a year or two ago, like 10 kids have all died in the exact same way. It's like, what's happening? What's going on? It's like, you fucking know what's going on.
5 was arguably lame.
Alice sits everyone down and explains all of this lore. And like not even a scene later, the comic book guy's like,
I'm gonna go see what else I can find out about Krueger.
Just reminisce about 2 years ago, dude.
Yeah.
You've been in this town. I think you've witnessed a ton of murder in your life.
Seriously, most of these people are fairly one-dimensional. I do think Kelly Jo Minter is a standout. I always like her and stuff. My take on this movie is that it feels like part Lifetime movie, part Nightmare on Elm Street movie.
They touched on like some really serious issues, abortion.
Because there are so many scenes that just discuss the pregnancy. There's this like struggle over her teen pregnancy. Now that Dan's dead, who's going to keep the baby? Dan's parents show up and they're like, no, this baby's going to be ours. And the cheesy, ham-fisted acting that goes along with the pregnancy part really just felt like Lifetime movie to me.
Fair.
I just want to make sure my baby's all right.
When you get to the Nightmare on Elm Street parts, and it does feel darker in terms of the look, the tone, you're starting to fade away a little bit in terms of like how fun these movies are.
Freddy's still fun in this, but his presence isn't felt throughout with all those exposition scenes. What is Alice going to do with the baby? Her father getting sober. I always thought that was inspirational, Matt. There's a lot of hope in Nightmare 5.
That's in the past, unless you stopped going to your meetings.
It's continuing to try to keep the same formula as 3 and 4, especially with like the cast of characters. There's a group going up against Freddy and they all kind of die in their own unique ways. Like the overeating model and the comic book guy, his death, I remember as a kid really thinking was cool. And this time watching it, I was thinking that it was a little lame.
My favorite death in it would be Greta's.
Greta.
I love that scene. That would have fit in part 4. Even Dan's death with the motorcycle.
Not only does he get taken over by Freddy in this really gruesome way, but he almost like changes into like a motorcycle hybrid.
Right before Dan passes, he looks up out of the car and he goes,
Hylas, wanna make babies?
I thought it was so funny as a kid.
Because it's Dan. We've already talked about how sweet Dan is.
That's true. You can't let Dan go out like that. Dan's an angel.
Yeah, I know.
There's this new trope that happens in this film where falling asleep has never been easier. You could literally fall asleep anywhere. You could fall asleep at a dinner table. You could fall asleep in a jacuzzi. You can fall asleep just doing anything. Early on, most people don't want to go to sleep, so they're very sleep deprived. So it would make sense to me that they would start nodding off and shit. But most of these people, it's just like they all got narcolepsy. And then, of course, there's the Freddy kid.
How come you don't like me?
Who has literally always bothered me. He bothered me back then, and he bothered me again on this rewatch. When he turns into Freddy at the end, it's even more cringeworthy because he's trying to be scary and do the Freddy voice. It's like, no.
Let's give the viewers a history of your bias, though. You hate children.
And it's a shame because I have one.
Kids, always a disappointment.
It's a shame because I feel like the premise of this movie is actually pretty cool.
It is. The idea that an unborn child...
Yeah.
Because you can't control that.
3 had a pretty unique concept. 4 basically is just kind of like almost like a rehash as far as like what the story is. This is a whole new idea with this dream child. There was probably a lot cut out. It's not the movie that the director wanted it to be. And then we're just left with what this is.
There wasn't always a lot of direction happening. Steven was spread really thin.
This is, again, more of an attempt to give Freddy a backstory, which I think is always a bad idea.
3 started that.
In the first one, the hot MILF mom, she explains who he is and why he's dead.
First off, goddamn, she's hot.
That's not what we're here for.
Secondly, 3 was adding to mythology. 2 didn't give a fuck about anything.
No, not at all. And I don't even think 4 touches on his backstory really at all. But now it's like, okay, let's have Alice have these dreams where she's like his mom and just trying to flesh him out as a character.
You're right. 4 was an extension of 3 in terms of it just doing the same thing. 5 is an extension of 3 by trying to flesh out the mythology 3 started.
And so he's birthed and he like scuttles across the floor, finds his remains in that church that they had the final scene in 4, and he's like, reborn. He's hiding inside of Alice the whole time. And at the end too, where there's like the final fight, he starts to rip himself out of Alice. Kind of reminded me of part 2 a little bit, where he is like possessing Mark. And this is kind of like a similar thing where he's possessing Alice, or Alice's baby.
We had no ending to this movie.
I do enjoy this film though, dude. I don't think there's a bad Nightmare on Elm Street film in terms of entertainment. But 5 is probably my least favorite of the entire series. It just doesn't have an identity. You
can just tell that the cast, the acting, the storytelling is just getting weaker. I think it's very noticeable here.
It is. I agree with you completely.
I've had enough of this crap.
Reviews for this particular entry were negative outright. A cheesy entry, convoluted mythology, series seems exhausted at this point. Some people did praise it for its spectacular special effects, however. This film only made $22 million on an $8 million budget, almost the lowest of any entry in the franchise. 2 years later, the planned final installment would arrive.
The only way now to revive it after 5 hadn't been as successful is let's make sure that everyone knew it was the last nightmare.
Freddy's Dead, the final nightmare, 1991. Directed by Rachel Talalay. Freddy manipulates a teenager with amnesia to escape Springwood and find new victims. This was the first New Line Cinema and Freddy film to be 3D. This starred Lisa Zane, Leslie Dean, Breckin Meyer, Sean Greenblatt, Ricky Dean Logan, and Robert Englund. Rachel Talalay wanted to infuse a little bit more surreal humor back into the series.
It was just after Twin Peaks came out. And so there's a huge influence of Twin Peaks in it, which is why I went toward humor.
Part 6 is probably by far my least favorite out of any of these that I've watched. Worst cast, worst story.
It's intentionally silly. Some of it I do feel falls into intentional choice, not failure. I can tell my role here will be to defend Part 6.
We set out to have fun on that movie, and there's stuff in that movie I love.
Alice's story basically concludes at the end of 5. She lives, but they don't bring her back in 6 at all. They just choose to kind of start anew with a whole new cast and a new kind of concept on how they're going to try to wrap this whole series up. This one starts 10 years from now, where Freddy has killed nearly every kid and teenager in Springfield. There's one kid left, and he's got amnesia, and he makes his way through this sort of intro of the film. He makes his way to like a youth shelter. The amnesia kid, who they just go by John Doe, they don't even really give him a name, him and the youth counselor, they set out to go back to Springfield to find out what's going on. Again, the dream mechanics, they're falling asleep literally anywhere. Any chance you get, these kids are falling asleep. The kid that's reading the map, he's in the back of a van bumping all over the place. He just falls asleep. They pull up to the house that they're going to go investigate, the most broken down, burnout looking house. What's the first thing that happens?
We'll go upstairs and find a bed, man. I'm tired.
I never even thought about it.
Dude, are you kidding me? This place looks haunted and burnt down. He's like, I gotta go get some sleep. The bed he literally gets in is a pile of shit. And so the main guy, Sean Greenblatt, he doesn't even have a Wikipedia page. I don't know what happened to that guy. He thinks that he's possibly Freddy's son, but turns out that it's Lisa Zane who, in a twist, is actually Freddy's daughter, which we see in a lot of flashbacks.
I was amazed. Out of all the films, I think this one blew my mind the most.
You're not defending this film at all like you said you were gonna. You know it's crap.
One, you're taking it too seriously. I'm being honest. This is Part 6. Rachel Talalay was making a comedy. We're literally doing Looney Tunes now.
But it may have been a mistake to take it so humorous. I think we should have gone from the humor into something that was more scary.
They're wrapping this whole story up. She's trying again to really give a lot of backstory to Freddy, build this whole scenario about who he was, how he turned out the way that he was, why he's Freddy.
I always wondered since I saw the first one, who is Freddy Krueger's father? And I finally learned it was Alice Cooper.
Breckin Meyer, not good. Takes a one toke off a joint, and all of a sudden the whole friggin' old world starts spinning. Dude, how they portrayed marijuana use back then is just hilarious. Let's talk about Freddy. This should have been a really grand send-off for him and for this series, which we all know that it's not what ended up happening, especially with the story beats that they try to put around who he is and where he's coming from. There's this like whole plot point about dream keepers that look like floating sperm that gave him this job.
The dream people, the ones that gave me this job.
They gave him a job.
Yeah, I know.
They employed him. They actually show it. They show where the sperms come to give him the job, like right as he's being burned alive.
3D sperm, they show up to you when you're about to die, and they tell you the job you're going to take on in the afterlife.
Their big plan was, if we bring Freddy into the real world, we can kill him.
I know.
No shit.
And that is where the movie fails. I defend this movie for its comedic value. I think it is a funny comedy, but you're right. It took the weight out of Freddy. If you're going to sell this as this is the last hurrah, this is the last movie you're ever going to see Robert Englund as Freddy, which it was at the time, that is disappointing. The movie is just a part 6 as a silly comedy in a series that ran out of steam. I actually think it's very entertaining for that.
I didn't watch the 3D element. I don't know why they decided to do this. In the special features on the disc, she was against having anything to do with it. She felt like it was sort of like a gimmick, and it kind of is even in the movie where it's like, we're going to go into Freddy's mind. The lady puts the damn glasses on to let you know it's time to put yours on.
Look at Lisa Zane's like looking at her hand.
And I'm not watching it in 3D, so I'm like, what is she doing? And then they do bring Freddy into the real world, and this is where the final showdown happens. In the very beginning, there's a throwaway gag where Breckenmeyer, you know, he's like a bad boy or whatever, and he's got some like pipe bomb that gets like confiscated. When it's time to fight Freddy, they go to the closet where they've confiscated everything from the kids that are there, and it's a goddamn arsenal. They got throwing stars, they got knives, they got bombs, they got it all. Amanda Kruger, the youth counselor who's now been revealed to be Freddy's daughter, is facing off against Freddy in this sort of like locked cage that they're feeding weapons to her, and they take their sweet ass time with literally every weapon you can imagine. She's throwing a throwing star at him, and it's a cut to a knife, and then it's a cut to this, and it's a cut to that. Dude, it felt like it went for like 5 minutes where she's just throwing every weapon that they're feeding to her under the door, where Freddy's just kind of like stuck on the wall.
I think all of that on paper probably would have worked well with better editing and better tension.
It feels like
yes, a parody.
Even the poetic ending of Freddy being killed by his own glove, that didn't necessarily bother me, but I didn't realize, again, looking at some of the special features, Rachel Talalay didn't want that to happen. It sounded like a lot of this was done by committee.
And that's probably why New Line gave her the job, because she was there from the beginning, and they're like, well, you're going to play ball, and she did.
I remember seeing on Fifth Avenue, a bus rolled by, and there was the poster, Freddy is dead, and I said, well, must mean that they milked the cow as much as they could, you know.
Critics and audiences alike ripped this one apart. Worst rated entry before the remake. And even the theme song, Why Was I Born, was even nominated for a Golden Raspberry.
That's bullshit.
Don't you fuck with me.
Well, it did have decent box office numbers, probably because of the curiosity of the final installment. I'm sure people came out to see it. Overall, I guess you could say maybe a sad way to conclude, given the results and the audience, you know, reception and such. But Wes Craven decided to come back one more time.
We killed Freddy. We admit it. We said he was dead forever, but we thought maybe there's one more film there.
Wes Craven's New Nightmare, 1994, directed by Wes Craven, where fictional villain Freddy invades the real world, haunting the cast involved in making the films. This one stars Heather Langenkamp, Miko Hughes, John Saxon, Tracy Middendorf, and of course, Robert Englund. Wes Craven came back to make a cerebral film versus the cartoonish installments that were unfaithful to his character. For him, he wanted to portray Freddy a little less comical and paying homages to the original film and the motion picture industry in general.
Wes has to come back and answer his critics and finally put the nail in the coffin and apologize a little bit for Freddy's dead.
My general statement is that it's a great idea with a so-so execution.
Yeah, I agree. I think this idea was ahead of its time. I think Scream gets all the credit for being a meta horror film. The Kevin Williamson era that took over in the late 90s, it truly began with Wes Craven's New Nightmare.
I think it was the precursor to like Scream. New Nightmare was made for the people who made the film, kind of adults. Scream was made for the audience that watches the film.
Just the idea of a movie about movie making with a real Freddy terrorizing characters, I think is great. Now that you've got Wes Craven back on board, I think this movie actually feels like a movie again. It's not an effects showcase by any means. It's not like a series of events or kills or anything like that. It's more of like a haunting movie than it is a slasher film.
He could have made it 3 Sperms though. I want a 3 Sperm spinoff.
Exactly.
The film does drag. There's minimal scares. It's just a lot of mood. It requires more from the actors to carry this film, which I will say this is the best Heather Langenkamp ever has been. I just feel like she's very much so matured as an actress and delivers everything very, very well.
She don't compare to her mom.
No.
Wes Craven, he's a character. He's serviceable, but he doesn't really sell the mystique of the story that he's trying to sell.
He comes across like he's bored of his own ideas. He doesn't even care.
When she meets up with him to try to figure out, like, Wes, what the hell's going on around here? And he basically is explaining what's going on.
Like, hey, listen, I'm just going to have to finish this script. Wait it out. This feels like a Lifetime movie. The vibe of it and the story, this feels like a Lifetime movie.
And that could be because of the child actor. As a younger actor, Miko Hughes was cute. His line delivery was cute.
Boys have a penis, girls have a vagina.
It just worked because of his age and how sort of cute and sweet even his voice was and so on. Not to say that he's an adult here, he's just a little bit older, but I think he's starting to reach that point where we need him to be a good actor now, and I don't think that he is one.
What this movie is asking, it's a lot to put on an 8-year-old's shoulders, which when they shot it, he would have been probably 7. Craven should have written the son out of it. He should have just had it be Heather Langenkamp's story. And since the movie rests on his shoulders, the kid pulls it off for the most part better than any other kid could. The problem is having the movie revolve around him.
His parents came to me and said, we have a way to make him cry, and we don't like to do it too often, but we'll do it. And I said, okay, fine. And so the mother left the set, and the father whispered in his ear and said, okay, your mother's dead.
Because this movie is kind of taken a little bit more seriously than some of the previous ones, when you're asked to take it seriously, it's hard to because of how it comes across. It was nice to see Robert Englund play himself and have a little bit of fun with this role. He inexplicably disappears though, which I thought was a little strange. You got John Saxon and his toupees are back. Saxon like dusts off his part 1 toupee. He's like, put me back in, Wes, put me back in. Puts it on.
Would you like this one? It's a little bit more full, or this one was I look a little bit more aged.
Seemed absolutely real.
Seemed, not was.
And let's talk about Freddy. This is the least amount that Freddy is on screen at all.
Yeah, it's a combined 3 minutes.
And the whole concept, again, which I don't think we really talked about, is that there's this entity that has sort of haunted the entire series. And because the series ended, this entity is starting to bleed through into the real world. The overall redesign of Freddy, I thought, was terrible, from what he's wearing, his gloves, even his makeup is terrible.
Yes, dude. I love the scene where he's in the talk show and comes out like better than I do the Freddy in this movie. And I don't understand, why did you recreate that?
Sometimes I think it was smart, sometimes I think it was a mistake. I don't know, I've gone around and around with that in my mind over the years.
He's in the real world taunting the cast, appear as he would in the movies. Like, I don't even understand why you had to redesign it.
He's not really burned in that one. He's more like his skin is split, like you'd see in a real anatomy book.
Even when he was on screen, I feel like the scares were generally lacking.
Dude, I saw this in the theater twice. The miss me part, everyone in the theater jumps at that. That's it. And they reacted more as if it were a drama.
I feel like the showdown was weak as hell. Miko Hughes gets pulled into Freddy's like world. Heather Langenkamp, or Nancy, now that she's Nancy again, follows them in, throws Freddy into some like furnace, and it's basically over after that.
I agree with you. The showdown is a little hokey, but I will say this, at 12 years old, it played very well.
I do think that it was nice that he got a chance to kind of put his spin on it. It really could have been executed a little bit better.
Yeah, I think this needed a rewrite. I think it just needed to cook a little more in the script department. This movie needed to be about an hour and a half, and I think it would have been much more digestible. It is the least rewatchable out of any Nightmare on Elm Street movie. It's just sort of dour the entire time. Freddy Krueger's not fun in this at all.
Subsequently, critics have regarded this film as the prelude to the Scream series, which was also directed by Wes Craven.
And you notice that Wes allowed the characters to take a swipe at Nightmare on Elm Street. It was scary.
Wow, well, the first one was, but the rest sucked.
She did it with great relish, I noticed as well.
I'm glad that they closed it out the way that they did, despite it not being everyone's like favorite necessarily, or it's got mixed reviews or results.
That had nothing to do with the quality. That had everything to do with culture moving on.
Yeah.
Freddy Krueger was at this point 1980s, just synonymous with MTV, but 80s MTV.
Sure.
And now we're in an era of Nirvana, Death Row Records. Authenticity was more of a thing rather than the grand excess and one-liners of Freddy Krueger. I mean, think, dude, this is the same year Pulp Fiction hit. I'm happy it got the swan song it deserved, but the culture, unfortunately, had moved on at that point.
I think there's still no denying the potency of what we watched and what this meant for movies and the horror genre, the idea, the villain of Freddy, the special effects. Clearly, that's why this whole film series, as well as Freddy himself, swept the entire world.
It is so fun. It's a strong example of a franchise in the horror category. Halloween goes off the rails way more than this series does. The Friday the 13th series, there are heights in there that are so high and the lows are so low, where Nightmare kind of has a consistency.
Yeah, and even though this was the conclusion, so to speak, Freddy would come back in Freddy vs. Jason, which was something that kids from the 80s were hoping one day would happen. And
we have to reference Jason Goes to Hell. That ending in Jason Goes to Hell is just such a classic. If you're an 80s baby and you were a certain age when that hit, that moment is iconic. I'm serious. I probably leapt off the couch as a kid. I was like, oh, shit.
I pissed fire. In 2010, a remake was made. It was completely rejected, and I'm so thankful for that.
I think the problem with the reboot was in timing. They had just released the deluxe Blu-ray, digitally remastered box set of all of my movies months before. An entire new younger generation saw those films on a 50-inch flat screen in Dad's man cave, and it was just too soon. And I think that it suffered by comparison.
Now that we've talked about this entire series, let's talk a little bit about the physical media itself. The reason that we decided to put this whole video together is that it's finally all here in 4K in one place, in one glorious box set, arriving in this steelbook packaging, which I think looks really cool up close and personal. There's a lot of embossing, debossing, got the rips of the sweater. His burnt skin showing through, I think looks great. Housing all 7 steelbooks inside in a really nice way. Each individual steelbook has the OG art on each one with the titles removed, so they just look like art pieces, which I think looks really classy. Each one of the spines has the original title treatment. It's numbered. And let's not forget, you get 3D glasses that come along with 6 too. They're right there in the package. We love that. There's also a certificate of authenticity I don't want to forget, so you know that this is legit.
And before I arrived at the studio today, Matt, I asked to see yours because I thought you were bullshitting me.
There it is. Certificate of authenticity.
All right, Matt. All right. Now I believe you. You officially own the Nightmare on Elm Street collection.
In general, I think this is a really well done package. As far as the transfers are concerned, I think this is the best that these movies have ever looked. But it's great to see all of these restored. I remember really thinking wow, number 2 looks really great and cleaned up.
I always would assume that the original would get a deluxe treatment, but seeing Freddy's Dead look beautiful is incredible. I love it.
All the transfers look clean as hell. Great color delineation. The darks are really dark, especially in 4 where we were talking about how colorful that one is. Everything is really popping. Number 5, the darkness element that we were talking about, you really do feel that dankness to it. And even Wes Craven's New Nightmare, that one just does have this cinematic feel to begin with, and this 4K really makes it look so much better than probably it ever has before.
I mean, the mom in the original looks so stunning. She was born to be portrayed in 4K.
My only gripe, and this is a gripe that I usually make, there's nothing updated as far as features are concerned. Even the menus for these discs are the same as I believe the prior Blu-ray releases, so you're really just getting upgraded transfers in this package, which is exactly why we're here. But I will say, there is already a ton of stuff out there for Nightmare on Elm Street. There's full-length documentaries about damn near everything that you would ever want to know.
The Never Sleep Again documentary is incredible, and it's about 4 hours, and it goes deep into each film. Heather Langenkamp made her own documentary. I Am Nancy. Robert Englund just made his own documentary about himself.
Many of the releases here have some special features each, but they basically accumulate to, let's say, 10 minutes or so each. And I really would have enjoyed having something new that is put out. I mean, obviously, Robert Englund can't stop talking about this series. Bring him back for an intro or something on the first one. I don't know.
He can't stop talking in general.
Pristine on your big flat screen in your living room with the lights dimmed down, and it's just going to be, it's 4K, it's ultra high def.
So all that being said, great series, Great release. Awesome to finally own all these in 4K in one place. With all my minor gripes aside, I really enjoyed revisiting this whole series from start to finish. I think it's excellent. Let us know which version you picked up. If you picked up the Steelbooks, if you picked up the regular editions, let us know what you thought about the transfers. Let us know what's your favorite entry in the Nightmare on Elm Street series. Let us know below. If you like this video, come check out some of our other videos. We have tons of other reviews. We live stream every other week. We've even got merch for sale that's physical media related. Come check that out at 4kkings.com. All that being said, Russ, will this be on our top 5 list for 2025?
We'll see, bitch. We'll just see.